Okay, so I'm going to record this because there's actually nobody here at the moment in the class, and that's okay because I said we could do online. I'm going to record this and I'm going to put it online so you can all see it, and we're just going to sort of go through this tutorial that we've got here about it says here comprehensive tutorial about computing the semester GPA. So let's just read this and sort of see what's going on and see how we can solve this. Each student is a cumulative GPA. So cumulative GPA, there's kind of some kind of average going on in there, I guess you would think. GPA, of course, is given semester only. Each course is an overall grade of 100. All right, so now we're actually talking about the ranges and the letter grades that go with those ranges, and also the grade point average that goes with that range. So that, okay, so yeah, maybe not averages. Final grade is converted to a letter grade. The letter grade corresponds to the grade point according to the table. So I guess what's going to be the input is going to be a final grade, and then we're going to check the input using these kind of conditions. So remember, conditions used in if statements or while statements, and then according to each of those conditions, then you're going to have these results. Now, only one of these conditions can be true. You can't have two of them true. You can't have three of them true. You can't have multiple true. You can only have one. But if you've set them up correctly, at least one of them will be true. So in other words, you won't have a score that's outside the range of 0 to 100. So the lowest possible score is 0, which is indicated by this condition, and the highest possible score is 100. Now, in each of these ranges, we cover different grades for those. So if a grade of X falls between, so it's what this means, 90 is bigger than, this is not the way we would write it in Python, by the way, but you know, it makes sense to us looking at it from a point of view of mathematics. 90 is less than X, and X is less than 100. Well, it's actually less than or equal to. So in other words, if X is in the range from 90 to 100, then the letter will be A, and the grade point will be 4. If X is in the range between 85 and 90, then the grade point will be B+, and the letter grade is B+, and etc. So this is, as I said, only one of these things can be true. Now, I hope that you remember in class we talked about conditional selecting statements in Python. I should be careful using the word select, because select is actually a keyword used in another programming language called SQL, where you select something from a database. It's not that kind of select. Okay, so we don't actually have a statement called select. Right? We use if, or we use while, right? So, but if we have the grade, we can only have one of these, and so the structure, I hope that you remember the structure that we use for that is if, elif, else. So we can set this up with a bunch of if, elif, else's to sort of achieve this thing where we separate all the grades out from each other and assign a letter to them and a grade point. So that can be done. Help students compute their GPA, write a program that asks the student's name and the number of courses for the semester. Okay, so that's interesting. The cumber, well, that's a typo, but it's not a big one. Then each course request the course code. All right, yeah. Display the message that shows the course and the course letter. Display a number of stars. All right, so for each course, we're going to give them a grade. When the student is finished entering the data, compute it, then we're going to have to do some kind of averaging, calculate all the grades and get the average of the grades, and then apply this again. Before starting the code, use computational thinking. All right, so in other words, before we just jump in and write our Python code, we need to use computational thinking. Can we abstract it? What can we decompose this into separate things? Now, one of them I've just mentioned. It's easy to sort of separate the grades based on that. We saw another sort of decomposition that we have to do is there's obviously some kind of averaging that needs to occur in there. And the pattern recognition, well, the GPA is applied, can be applied to each individual class. No, GPA is only for the total average, isn't it? Start writing the code, assuming that all input entered by the user are correct as sample 1. Then add input validation. So your input validation will be, so if they try and if they put a number sorry, a letter instead of a number, that would be that we would have to check that. So we can do the is alpha thing. We could check to say, so we read in characters and then we're going to convert them to integers or to floats, right? So we could test is alpha on anything that's passed in there, and if we found that somebody's entering something that's not a number. The other thing we can do is if a number is less than 0, well, that's not valid. And if a number is more than 100, then that's not valid. So there's some validation that we can do on the thing that's entered. So here's some test data. So what do we got? They put in the name, and then they ask how many courses. So this number of courses that they're going to do, that's going to set up a counted loop, isn't it? So this is going to be our loop counter. Our loop is going to go from 0 to less than 4, or else from 1 to 4, because we're going to have exactly 4 courses. In this case, another student might come along and have 5 courses, and then we have to have a loop of 5. Or another student might come along and have 3 courses. So we're going to set up a loop, and the loop will count using a variable as the condition to stop counting. And so each class, yes, okay. So we test for each class the grade that's entered, and we apply to that a grade, which is printed out, and then we will print a number of stars depending on what their grade point average is. So if they have an A, then they're going to get 4 stars. Any B is going to be 3 stars. Any C is going to be 2 stars, etc. All right, that's fine. Now this should be an error, and it is. So when they said, what are the number of courses? Then okay, so you could test for integer using the integer division // and if you had a remainder, then you've got a problem there. So you could come up with the error there, or you could just test to see if it's an integer or a float. Enter the number of courses, 4, and so here we get having a number. All right, so this one here is you must have 4. So we can test the name that's put in as the course code, that it has to be a certain length. You can do that with the len function. All right, 4 letters followed by 4 digits. 4 letters you can do with is alpha, and yeah, so you can do that. And so you might have to split up. So this one you might have to split up you're gonna have to read in that string, maybe take the first 4 characters and test to say that that's the characters, and then take the last 4 and test to see that they're numbers. All right, so then course code, what is the overall? This one here still hasn't, I think that they're meant to have another 1 there or something, like that, because it didn't come up with an error again. D plus, okay, is that on the, didn't notice D, yes there is, D plus, 1.5, okay, wow. So these ones here, we tested there for certain errors, and so that needs to be in our code eventually. So here's another error, I think. Oh, maybe not. EFFL, well, whatever. I guess, I thought it, yeah, EF, yeah, it's got to be 4 characters followed by 4 numbers. Yeah, all right, so, and there's no more errors there. What we got here? So again, they got an error in the number of courses they're taking in the semester. That needs to be sort of sorted. And you'd enter again, they got 4 courses. We got a good, that's not good, still bad number of, because they didn't have an 8-character long name. Okay, so what are some other ones here? Yeah, well, again, a bad name. This one's too long. So we've got a lot of sort of error things going on there. Let's have a look at how we could sort of solve that. So let's take it piece by piece and see what we could do. This part here might be a good place to start. We're going to enter in a value, and we're going to test that value, and we're going to see if it is in a range. And you can do that with a bunch of if, elif. So we write a little function to do that. Let's see how that would work. So overall to letter, right? So if 90 is less than the grade, is less than or equal to the 100, then the grade is A, and etc. So you can put this straight, you can just code that straight into a function, which is going to return a grade. The grade is going to be a letter grade that we can then use somewhere else as we go. Now, how would that work in a program? We ask them to enter their name. All right. Now look what we're doing with this to sort of make that work. We ask them to enter their name, and we capitalize their name. Now, remember, capitalize is different than upper or lower. Capitalize, the first character is capitalized, the rest of them are lower, of course. So that's the nice way of doing names. That's the way which is standard. That's how we do names when we're, hi Sahar. That's how we do names when we're writing formally. So so here's our main. If we look at this, this would be our main. And so this is where the program starts. We had some problem with some students. I'm not being sure where the program starts. The program doesn't start processing up here. All that's happening here is this is defining a function which is going to be able to give us this letter grade. Now, it doesn't actually give us the grade point. It only gives us the grade. We have to have another one to do the grade point. We see we did make another one to do the grade point. So what happens there? We could have, well, because we can only return one value. So what we're doing here is we're going to, we calculate the grade here. We can pass the grade into this other function. And then based on what is the grade, we will produce the grade point average. So these two functions together, I notice they're both just if elif, if elif, if elif, if elif. The idea of if elif is you can only have one result, right? You can only have one. One of these things can only be true. No two of these can be true. So if it was an A, then it can't be a B or a B plus or anything like that. The way the program would process is it takes in this value LT. Is it an A? If it's an A, then the GP is 4, and we exit immediately returning that GP. But if it's not an A, then we'll test to see if it's a B plus, et cetera, and we go down each of those. So we've got those functions going. So what's going to happen with this program? As you see, it's going to ask for input of the name. It's going to change the name capitalization. If they put it in an uppercase, then it's going to change it to capitalized case. If they put it in lowercase, it's going to change it to lowercase. Then it's going to ask them for the number of courses that they take that semester. And now this is a cool way of doing it. So have a look at this and see what's going on here. We're saying while. The while loop, where they enter the name, and then we put them into a while loop and we check to see if it's numeric. If they had put some value in, which was not numeric, we just ask them to put it in again. We give them an error message. We say, put it in again. So notice this line of code is exactly the same as this line of code, because what we're doing, this is a common way of doing error. We call it error trapping. And I use the word trapping because the user is put into a Sentinel loop. Now, I hope you're familiar with the Sentinel loop by now. The idea of a Sentinel loop is you go into the loop, and the only way to get out of the loop is by putting the value which is in the condition. So here we are, as long as we have a non-numeric input, we're going to get this error. So this is trapping for non-numeric. All right. And then we're going to take that same number, the number of courses. And if that number of courses is, so we're going to do the course code. We're going to have the while loop, which is going to go through. So they said 3 courses, for example, right? And so we convert that 3 to integer. And then we're going to, we started with 0 and our sum was 0. That's how we do totals and averages. And then as long as the count, which starts out as 0, is less than how many courses they said they were doing, then we're going to do this loop. And so the loop is going to, now this thing here about the C is less than 4. The C is less than 4 is going to be about the, to do with the length of the code. So do you see this? So the course code has to be 8 characters long. If it's not 8 characters long, and if the first 4 characters are not alpha, so that's what this is doing. it starts at the first position of the code and checks to see each one of those first 4 characters to see if they are alpha. So that's what that's doing. That's why it's in a loop for 4. And that's all that's doing, is to check to see that we've got an alpha numeric. It's kind of tricky, isn't it? It's a big kind of program. And the other thing is that that the last 4 characters must be numeric. So we're checking to see if so B starts with position 4. This is tricky. So what we're doing here is the course code is going to come in. It needs to be 8 characters long. If it's not 8 characters long, we're going to get an error. Sorry?
That's from here, sir.
Yeah, so am I. Welcome. So this bit of code here would be just to check to make sure that they put the correct course code in. The code has to be 8 characters long. The first 4 characters must be alpha, and the last 4 characters must be numeric. So that's what this is. This is for the last 4 characters. B starts off as 4, last 4 characters. C starts off as 0, first 4 characters. Okay, and so that's all that's doing, is it's this little bit of, we might have been able to even put that into a function. And so then we ask them, what is their grade for that course? What is your grade for their course code? What is that? This is, what is your overall grade? Oh, really? Okay. Then we, overall to letter. So we better have a look at what's the overall to letter bit here. Yeah. So they put in their grade, and well, that's a number, and then we give them the. I'm recording this, so you can download the problem, and we're just sort of going through it with this solution that we've got here. So this is actually calling our first function. Okay, this is actually calling our first function. So where did our letter come from? Hold on. Wow, hold on. 4 letters. Sorry, I didn't make this program, so I have to go through and sort of figure out what this person did. Letter. Maybe I need to make this smaller. Okay, so overall grade, letter. Oh, well, yeah, that's right. Letter is created at this point. Letter comes out as it is one of these things. So we put in their grade, which is a number, and out comes the letter as LG, and it's converted to letter here. So the letter here is going to be A, B, C, D, E kind of thing, right? And so then what we're going to do is we're going to pass that letter into to get the grade point average out, which is this other function here. So we pass the letter in there. The letter is then tested by this if else, and we get a number, which is then returned here as the grade point. Then we add the grade point to our sum, and our sum of our grade point had been, before we got into the loop, set to 0. So if we go through the 4 courses, we add all these. So this is just a standard averaging going on there, right? We're going to add all those together, and then later we're going to divide them out. And that's what we do there. We divide them by the count. No. So then we have this thing called stars, which is grade point to stars. Now that's kind of a cool function. What happens with grade point to stars? So say you put in the number 4. If the number 4 is put in as your grade point, or 4, you can't have a number bigger than 4, can you? So we have this function, math function called floor, and we have a function called seal. And what the function floor does is if you put in a number 4.1, it'll convert it to 4. So it's kind of like the integer division. So that's just a shorter way. We could have done this with integer division. So if they put in a grade point average of 4, we're going to return this string of 4 strings. If they put in a grade point average of 3.9, the floor of 3.9 is 3. And so you're going to return this string of 3s, etc. And so we get a number of stars. So the reason for that is so that we can print out the number of stars. So we see this stars is equal to grade point average stars. And then we're going to print a print statement where we have their GPA and the stars are printed out. So let's run this program and see how that works. I'm sorry, it's there was a little bit of trickiness involved in this one, but kind of fun. Let's run it. Please enter your name. Oops. Enter the number of courses you're taking this semester. I'll just do 3. Course code number 1. So if I don't have an error, so it should be all right. What's your overall grade? Of course, my grade is going to be like 92 or something, right? I hope, just like you guys. And so the letter grade is 10, is 4. Course number 2 is and so this time I didn't do as well. And so I got a 78 is only a C plus. Ooh. You have to get what, 80 to get a C to B? Ooh, it's tough here now, isn't it? All right, and then and let's say whoa, barely passing with a 67. Wow, that's harsh. And so then my semester GPA is 2.66 and I get 2 stars. So that's kind of how that works. Kind of fun for students to do something like this, I think, because we get to see a few things. So let's just review what we did. This first bit here, first chunk of code that you should be able to do something like that now, basically is just the if only one of these things can be true. We passed in a number, and we pass out a string. And so that's fine. Then we have this letter to grade, which does the opposite. It passes in a string and passes out a number. So the number passed out is a float, and that's fine too. Then we have another one which passes in the grade, which is a string. And no, it's not. It must be a number. It passes in the grade, which is a float, because that's the thing that's passed out of that. And then tested that, and based on the test, it's going to pass out a string. There's other ways that we could have done this, but you know, well, with every problem that you have, there's more than one way of doing it. And then, so the main is pretty simple. Now, this stuff here in the main, that's just error testing. I call it error trapping. So we ask them for their input here, and then we test that input to make sure it meets our requirement. And if it doesn't, we get them to enter again. And so they're stuck in this point here until they give the correct input. That's what's called error trapping. And we do it with a read. Then while the read is not good, we ask them to read again and we give them an error message. That works very, very nicely. And so this initialization of these 2 values, what that's doing is it's setting us up for the while loop, which we're going to use to calculate our average for our GPA. So we're getting a count and a sum. We use those for averages. And then we've got another little while, what do we do here? So we get the course. So we've asked them how many courses they have, right? We've asked them how many courses, number of courses. And so as long as we haven't done as many courses, we're going to keep in this loop. And then we've got another little loop inside the loop where we're testing the code that they put for the course. And we test the first 4 characters to make sure that they're alphabetic. And then we test the next 4 characters to make sure that they're numeric. And there's 8 exactly. So we only have to do this loop 4 times. The same loop tests the first 4 characters for alpha and the last 4 characters for, I should have this in, and the last 4 characters for numeric. So that works pretty nice. Yeah. Then we're doing our calculations, right? What was your overall grade? The overall letter. So we actually ask them for the grade for each course, because this is in a loop. And then while we're in the loop, we print their grade and we give them their letter, and then we add that to the total. And then when we finish the loop, we calculate the average, and then we give them their the final printout. Let's run it again just so that we can see it. Morning. And so different name. Well, let's run it from the start. So our input, a different name. and the number of courses. This one will take. So I'm going to put in a bodgy course number, a course name, and I should get an error. Course should consist of 4 letters because it wasn't long enough. And so it's going to ask me to do that again until I get it right. It doesn't really sort of test to see if, you know, these numbers are good, because there's no course like that. So it doesn't test that. It's going to accept this as good. So if we were doing this as a real sort of business program, we would have to do a little bit more work to sort of give the range of codes that are correct, because it actually says that that is a correct course node when it's not. Now, if I try an overall grade, which is wrong, 120, well, it doesn't like that. Okay, so we do have, their program is not quite perfect. Yeah, let's run it again now. That was interesting. Yeah, all right. So it was, so we haven't checked the range of, possible grades. We haven't checked 0 and 100 as our range. We could do that, but I don't want to confuse you anymore. Maybe you can think of how could we test that they have done that, that we got a grade that was correct. Well, we could just do it here, right? We could just say while overall grade is less than, okay, is less than, is not that, is less than 0, or overall grade is bigger than 100. That's an error. If either of those things are true, then we do a print and say you must enter an yeah, why not? You must enter a grade between 0 and 100. And then you could do another, so the way these error trapping work is you have an input, and then you have a condition. And if the condition's false, you stick them in a loop. And they're just going to have to keep entering that thing. So pretty easy to sort of fix that problem that we saw, which was the grade, when we put the grade outside the range. Now that should work. Let's run it again. So how many courses did it take this semester? Let's just do 3. So this is not so great because you can put in these bodgy course numbers, right? As long as you've got a number, and of course that course doesn't exist, but it didn't pick it up because all we were checking was that it was a characters at the start and numbers at the end. The overall grade, 120. You must, so that's the code that I just put in there, and it'll stay in there as long as I put a wrong number in there. I'm stuck in that loop. But as soon as I put a correct number, then I move on to the next thing. You know, you got an F for that. So okay, so how easy is that to do error trapping? I had the input here, and all I had to do was put a while statement after it, put my condition, say you made an error, and then put another input. And that's exactly what they did here. All right. But they did it with a while, and yeah, it's a little bit trickier sort of setup, but same idea. Right. So I hope you all had a good look at that one. I think I've sort of covered it all. We saw our error trapping. Yeah. All right. So I think I'm going to stop recording at this point, and maybe if there might be some questions.